So Huw Turbervill here, editor of the
Anyway,
Cricketer.
I still need money for flights to New Zealand. Is that
We'll come
okay?
to that in a minute, David. We'll come to that in a minute. Editor of the Cricketer magazine, and this is sort of the latest in my series of Huw Meets video articles for the Cricketer magazine and Cricketer and its digital channels. It's a Monday morning, so we're all feeling a bit bleary-eyed. But I have with me David Gower, our monthly writer, and John. Now, I didn't recognise John straight away when I saw him on Friday. He was on the tube, and I was reading my phone, and he saw the back of my phone, which had a badge of a certain football club on it. And we got talking about how the new manager was getting on. We mustn't say which club because it will just alienate a load of people. You'll never walk alone. And so, Johnny, we got chatting, didn't we? And then I recognised you. Well, I suddenly sort of recognised you had an England tie, and I suddenly thought, oh, you must be a cricketer. And then it was Johnny Morris. So yeah, so David and
apparently
John,
you'd been stalking me ever since.
That's right. Yeah. So we were inseparable for about 3 hours, and it took me about 4 hours to set up the picture with you and David and Graham Gooch, didn't I? We dragged them out of their respective hospitality suites to they very kindly posed for a picture, and we were going to relive the Tiger Moth tales, aren't we?
Yeah, we're setting up that picture, just a very early trial version for Only Connect or something. You know, one of the simplest puzzles of all time. What do these three people have in common? And who's the fourth man in the picture? You know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I have been showing it to a few people over the weekend and guessing the connection and so on, and opening up the picture. So first of all with Johnny, then you and Johnny, and then with Graham Gooch. So it's good. I think it's going to work really well in the magazine.
Out of interest, okay. Out of interest, depending on the people you've been showing this picture to, what was the overall response? Somewhere between bemusement and, yeah, come on, give me an easy, give me a harder one.
Much hilarity, yeah. It was just great. I mean, yeah, I'm really impressed. Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it, to get you all together after all these years.
But strangely, Graham's birthday is not the same as ours.
Very true.
Ah.
Well, Johnny's 60.
Odd man out. There's the odd man out. He's got the wrong date.
Sorry, you two both got the same birthday?
Correct.
I didn't know that. Oh.
They always see this is what happens on a Monday morning when suddenly one of us wakes up.
How would I have known that? I mean, quite honestly.
Especially what the date is as well.
It's not September the 17th, is it? No.
What?
No, okay.
What, September Fool's Day? Oh, sorry.
When is your birthday?
I gave you a clue there. Fool's Day.
Oh, April 1st, right.
Oh,
okay.
He's sharp, the old boy. Sharp as a tack.
I'm never the sharpest. I'm going to leave you to talk in a minute. Oh, well, so you April Fool, right? I didn't know that. I should have known that.
The ironic part of it is we're both fools. That's the problem.
Yeah. Nobody's fools. I should have known that about you, David. I didn't know that. I've probably heard that in the past and forgotten it or something. Just, you've been asked this before, David Ivan Gower. Where's the Ivan from?
Going back a couple of generations, it's a sort of semi-Welshness, because going back a couple of generations, I had a grandfather, Ivan Llewellyn Gower, which gives you a bit of a clue. And now you ask, I have a sort of vague understanding that there was land and property in deepest, darkest Western Wales, somewhere in Pembrokeshire, somewhere around there, the other side of the Gower Peninsula, which is not ours, still isn't, never has been, still isn't. I have an understanding that either grandfather or great-grandfather gambled it away, which is kind of what we did with the Tiger Moth.
That's interesting, because I don't know if I've told you this, but my family are from Pembrokeshire, and the Turbervilles branched off into two separate families. One that was extremely wealthy in Glamorgan, and the other one that stayed in Pembrokeshire and was really skint. So it's quite a similar story, really, isn't it?
Not
dissimilar. Anyway, this isn't about me. It's
Oh,
about.
what an extraordinary coincidence.
This is not about me. Although, and Huw, HUW.
Talk your skins. They're not going to spare money for a flight to New Zealand.
Right. That's you said you're going to get that plug in. So,
is it back of the bus or front of the bus, David?
Well, let's not be up front, of course.
it does sound a lovely little tour, that one. I would love, if I'd been retired, I would have gone on that 3-test tour to New Zealand. It's a beauty. Right, David, I'm going to let you go now and talk to Johnny about. We're going to pick up the story. 1990, India are the visitors, and the Test match is Lords, isn't it? And I'm going to take a back seat now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Right. In which case, John, over to you.
Your memory's that good, you see, isn't it, David? You played that many test matches, you can't actually remember the test.
I sent you the scorecard earlier.
That might or might not be an unfair allegation.
You see, it's very fresh in my memory because I only played the 3, so I can recount them quite well. But if you went back to your 25th test match, you probably even know where it was. So well, I get where you're at.
So who made all the runs? Go on.
Well, there was a fella called Gooch, I think, who managed to get 333. What I do remember is sitting on the balcony for nearly 2 days watching him score all these runs. So at number 6, I was a little bit of a spare part in that batting lineup with yourself, Robin Smith, Lammy, and others. So coming in at number 6, but of course for me it was after the Lord Mayor's show. Because I did actually come into bat when Gucci got out. If I always tell the story, I'm just a man for a crisis at 642 for 4.
Yeah, well, I've always told people about that same couple of days that I think I got something like 32. Was given out erroneously caught bat pad when it came right off the middle of the pad. So I have to tell people that that was my one chance to make a 100, which just went begging simply because of a slight. I mean, okay, these things happen. Umpires do make mistakes, and you have to walk off, and you have to accept it, don't you? But yeah, I had to watch it as well. I mean, fine, it was a monumental feat, but I mean, I can sympathise with you because, I mean, normally speaking, you'd be 2 or 3 places higher up the order, wouldn't you? Rather than having to sort of fit in to a new role at 6. I mean, how did you probably hated waiting, didn't you?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't something I was used to. I did bat in the sort of top 4 all the time for Derbyshire. So, it was a position I wasn't really comfortable with or used to by any means. But listen, just to get in the team and play was the honour that goes with it. And batting at 6, you just did what you were told, obviously. And there was no way I was going to bat in the top 4 anyway. When you looked at what the team was and who was batting there, so. Just who knew that Gucci was going to play so well, Robin Smith was going to play so well, Lammy was going to play so well, and we were going to get the score we got. So I could have been in at, 50 for 4 or something. You just don't know. But obviously, from that perspective, 642, I think it was, when Gucci got out. And of course, I only went into bat because Robin Smith was in the 90s.
Right, yeah.
And they wanted him to get his 100, and there was so much time in the game. So... that's why I went into bat. There's no doubt about that. And I remember sort of passing Gucci as we sort of walked off. And obviously I'm nervous as hell. And, this huge rapturous applause for him as he's coming off the field. And it's quite overwhelming, really, when you sort of think back on it. To follow that was well, I was in a no-win situation. Could have got out for now, and that would have been that. But fortunately, I managed to get 4 not out, and Judgy got his 100, and we walked off.
That's the most important 4 not out of your life.
Well,
in terms of waiting to get the chance, you're always a confident batsman, a stroke maker. You had a swagger to your batting, which never does anyone any harm in my book. I think that's a very good thing to have. When did you first think it was a viable thing to be playing for England?
I think the winter before, when they went to the West Indies tour, you didn't go on either, I don't think, David, did you?
No.
So I played really well 1989, really well, and I was sort of thinking to myself, I've got a chance here. I'm not sure if I didn't finish in the sort of like top 5 run scorers in the country that particular winter. And I remember getting a phone call. Well, they rang Old Trafford, and if you remember, they used to have the payphone in the corridor at the away team dressing room. And the old dressing room attendant came in and he spoke to Devon, and he said, "Oh, Devi, there's a phone call for you. It's off Mickey Stewart." So Devi went down, he came back in and said, "Oh, he's been selected for the West Indies." And he said he wants to talk to you, obviously to myself. So I went down to this corridor and sort of picked the phone up. Hello, Mickey, sort of scenario, expecting to be either selected for the A tour, which I think went to Zimbabwe, or the full tour, which was the West Indies. And I didn't get either. So it was a bit of a kick, really. And he just sort of like said,
"No, go on. Sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, what was the rationale of that? Because I mean, it's one of the things that had evolved over the years. Management, at least talking to players, good or bad, to try and explain the decisions.
I mean,
the
initial surprise was what took me as much as anything, because I really did expect to be going somewhere. When I played so well, I think I'd got 600s and big scores, average I think nearly 60 or something like that. I'd had a really good year. And to be told straight away, just to let you know, we've not selected you for either tour, it was a bit of a bombshell to me, to be honest. And and then the comment was, "Well, we don't think you've got enough experience to go to the West Indies, and we think you're far too experienced to go to the Zimbabwe tour." Right? Okay. And I sort of put the phone down. I thought, well, that's that then. I went and worked selling cars for the winter.
Oh, I need one of them as well.
Well, we can always find you a car, David. I'm sure somebody will find that for you.
Cool. Right. So okay. So that's obviously a bit of a setback. So what next?
Well, as I say, one of the things I'd been criticised of over all of my career really was the fact that they didn't think I worked hard enough, training wise. All the things that we all go through, you get sort of pigeonholed a little bit. I felt as though I'd worked as hard as anybody, and I went away and worked even harder on my fitness that winter, and tried to get a bit fitter, a bit stronger, if you like. And came back with the intention of doing exactly what I'd done in the year before in the championship, and get runs. It was a good start to the summer for me as well. So I got runs at the start of the season, and bless him, Neil Fairbrother, who I'd grown up with in many respects because we were both Cheshire schoolboys, played in the under-13s Cheshire schoolboys team together. He was in the team against New Zealand, wasn't scoring particularly well, and I got back-to-back hundreds in the championship game at Taunton, and then we played against you guys at Hampshire at Portsmouth. And I got a big 100 there. I got 160 or something like that, and got the phone call from Ted Dexter, telling me that I'd been picked for the squad, and it was the 2 one-day internationals. First one was at Headingley, and the second one was at Trent Bridge. But I didn't get selected in those 2 games. But Gucci came to me during those 2 days and said, I was going to make my debut at Lords against India, and I'd play in all 3 test matches no matter what happened. So that was quite encouraging, and obviously delighted to be part of the squad for the one-day team, but also knowing that I was going to Lords and going to play in the team. It was a great feeling.
Do you know what? He promised me something similar some years later. That never happened. Which is all our fault, actually, of course,
Well, yeah.
So
we're going to leave Gucci alone. Just to say, I was there at Lords when Kapil Dev hit those 4 sixes, so that was brilliant. I watched with my mum, and
that was quite an incredible scenario, really. And I saw, funny enough, Eddie Hemmings on Friday. It was the old Players' Day at Notts, which I finished my career at Notts. I had 2 years there. And I went down there, and the whale was there, and I got talking to him about that. And he said, I didn't really mind. He said, because Gucci came up to him as we were walking off and said, "By the way, you just won us the test match." because maybe would have made him follow on. I don't know, but that's what Eddie said that Gucci had said to him. So he didn't take it too badly, but it was incredible batting, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the Tendulkar catch that day as well, the one-handed one where he reached out.
Yeah,
brilliant.
So 3 tests in a row.
Old Trafford next.
Well, yeah, we went to Old Trafford. We won that first test. I mean, Gucci then gets another 100 in the second innings. I just remember being at short leg really for the whole of the test match. It felt at Lords. Got a couple of catches. When you're just under that helmet all the time, you're not far away from the action. And I seem to remember Gus bowling quite well, Gus Fraser on a slowish pitch, and then Dev running in and trying to bang it halfway down and getting panned a little bit by Azruddin, who got 100 in the first innings, if you remember. That was just sublime.
Well, I saw a lot of Azza. I mean, he'd done it when we first played against him in 84-85. He got 3 in the series out of 5 matches and played exactly the same way. Lots of flicky, wristy stuff through mid-wicket, timing, composure. It's one of my great sadnesses, actually, because Azza seemed, and he was, such a sort of gentle, lovely man with a real talent. And then when he got embroiled in nefarious things off the field some years later, allegedly, that seemed a great shame to me.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I got a phone call from our coach, Phil Russell, saying if I got a chance to have a chat with him to see whether he'd come and play for Derbyshire the following summer. And I did, and he did. And he was brilliant to play with in our team at Derbyshire. He was such a class player. And you're right, it seems to have sort of like took the shine off what was a glittering career as captain of India, and what a great player. But to have these allegations alongside him, just didn't feel somebody that should deserve that of his brilliance of the game, really. But he was fabulous for Derbyshire and brilliant in that series. But of course, we then went from Lords to Old Trafford. Again, Gucci gets another 100. It was just like watching people bat. And it was great to be part of it. I felt as though I did get an opportunity actually in the second innings. I got a chance in the first innings, but Cumberley, I went to cut a straight one off Cumberley and got my middle and off pole knocked out, which he'd done to many people after me, but we hadn't seen really him before then. And he definitely did me. It was a great bit of bowling in many respects, but if I'd have been a bit more savvy and known a bit more about him, I probably wouldn't have tried to cut him from straight.
It's a truism, though, isn't it? Whoever you face, if you haven't seen anything or much of them before, all these things, either you have to be very, very sort of clever or lucky. So the first one, for instance, Anil used to bowl that sort of slightly turning, googly, quicker, flatter thing, which confounded a few people, as the Johnny Morris of this world, as you say, many others. But the first time you see it, you go, right, you log that and you think, I've got to look for that. If the first one you get is, it's middle and off, and your bat's nowhere near, then you have to log it, but remember it for next time. Yeah. Whether you play Warne, Abdul Qadir, any of the great spin bowlers, all their varieties, all their tricks, you've got to log them as each and every one arrives.
Yeah, I mean, you're so spot on, right? I remember playing against Sacklin for the first time, and he bowled that Dushra ball that went the other way, and I saw it different in the air. I remember thinking, as it's coming down, and it went like a leg break, and I missed it, and I got away with it, but it had been logged in for the next time. So, you just get that feeling. But, he did me. I went to cut a ball that I shouldn't have cut. Got my middle and off pole knocked out for not many. And then second innings, if you remember, we were batting in the dark. Kapil Dev was bowling. And Gucci had said, look, stay out as long as you can. Want to declare at some point, let's get as many on the board as we can quickly. And Judgy was whopping it everywhere. I got to about 15 or 16 or something like that. And he absolutely drilled one straight back, and I never saw it, and it hit me on the elbow.
Ow.
Full on the elbow, on the inside of my right elbow here. I just sort of went, and it just clattered into me. It would have hit me in the face if it had been straight. I just never saw it at all. And I had to retire hurt. I couldn't hold my bat, and then Jack Russell got 50 the next day. So it was just like another opportunity maybe have gone, you know. So yeah, and then
it's what's known as a test of character.
Well, that's the game, isn't it? And you know, we have more bad days than we have good days. But that was a bit of a pill, really, because I'd got in, I'd started to play a bit freer. Because you know what you're like when you're trying to make your way, you're a bit tight and you're not quite sure how you're going to fit in. And you know, do you want to let yourself go and get caught at cover or something, which I did on many occasions in my career. Or do you just try and knuckle down and stay in for as long as you can to build a bit of a score? And then to have that opportunity for, I suppose, in that test match, not taken away. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't done on purpose or anything like that. It was just a bit unlucky. I remember sitting on the balcony the next day watching Jack get this 50 and thinking, they're my runs, you know.
Well, no, fair enough. Yeah.
You know, and that was that. But I knew that as long as I was fit for the next test, which I was at the Oval. I mean, Sachin, just going back to that, Sachin got his first 100 in that test match for India. In all, you know, his first ever international 100, and you just knew then that there was going to be a player there that was going to be around for a long period of time. And you know, you guys who played a lot of cricket and a lot more Test cricket, obviously, than me, and far better judges than me, and no doubt. But he, you know, he just stood out to me as a cricketer that you were going to be around for a long time with such brilliance, you know, in his bones. Really, what a player! So
yeah, but
I felt quite privileged that was part of that Test match that he got his first one in. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you watch someone like Sachin, okay, and we know with hindsight he was one of the genuine greats of all time, massive amount of runs and all that sort of stuff. But but obviously precociously good, very, very young. And there you are at the same time, you're trying to kickstart your own Test career, thinking, no doubt at this stage, well, I've just been hit on the elbow, through no fault of my own, and are the fates against me? Which actually is a very tough thing to negotiate, especially in an era where selection could be rather unforgiving in those days if things didn't go pretty well pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've all heard the stories of one Test wonders and all that, the amount of people that went through the door and came out the other side. I always look back at it, and you know, this is not blowing smoke somewhere where it shouldn't, but you look at yourself and Graham, Robin Smith and Lammy, where are you going to get in? You know, you guys were top players, and you've got Atherton just kept making his way in the team. His first series, I think. Well, I might have played against Australia the year before.
He did. Sure. Yeah, I gave him a debut the year before. Yeah.
So he was sort of getting more confident with his own game, I would imagine. So, you know, I look back at a lot of players like Matt Maynard and Neil, if you like Neil Fairbrother, like I said, Huw Morris, Rob Bailey, Alan Wells. If I've missed anybody, my apologies to him. But, you know, these players who are good county players, scoring runs consistently, but were never really going to get in before yourselves, Gucci, Gat, Lammy, of an era when we played. So, you know, to get the opportunity and have an opportunity to see if you could play at that level, but you needed that break. You needed to get a score and say, well, you can't leave me out the team now. And that's what didn't happen for me, really.
I mean, the irony is, as we chat about this now, the irony is that the Oval at the end of that same summer, I was one of those thinking, well, I need to get a score now, otherwise I might not be going to Australia.
Yeah.
The clouds were looming and the whispers were starting. So I was probably a bit preoccupied at the Oval with trying to get some runs. Personally.
Well, you did. I mean, that 100 you got. That 100 you got. I batted with you for actually quite a long time, and it was quite nice, really, because and you know, the reputations of you being relaxed, laid back, easygoing, you know, that sort of character actually rubbed off on me that day, because you were just telling me to play, you know, and it was a nice pitch. This was in the second innings, not in the first innings. I nicked off in I opened the face and run on straight to third slip to Azza. and why I do not know. I can't even think about the way I got out in that innings.
Yeah.
And you kept coming down and saying, just, if it's a bad ball, put it away. Because I remember blocking one off Ravi Shastri, and it was the biggest long up he'd ever bowled, and I just patted it back. And you came down the wicket to me and said, you'd have hit that into the crowd normally. Next time, do it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. What am I doing? And I freed myself up a little bit. And I remember hitting Atul Wasan down the ground for 4, straight drive, and he bounced me the next ball, and I pulled it for 4, and I thought, I'm away.
Yeah.
That's me batting. And then an over later, I got to about 30, whatever it was, 32, I think. And I just nicked one down the leg side, ran straight off the face, straight to the keeper. And plod, Nigel Plews gave me out, and I turned my back on him, and I just heard the noise, and I thought, I've got to go, And I did, ran straight off the face, and it was just it's a death, you know what it's like when you get caught.
Everyone hates that. Everyone absolutely detests that. I mean, both of them always says as a bowler it's perfectly legitimate, but that's beefy for you. If he was a batsman, he'd say, "Oh, so unlucky,"
Yeah.
So that sort of kind of leaves you in the balance, doesn't it? I mean, actually, going back, I mean, it is one of the things the various times I've had that sort of opportunity to be with someone in the middle and to sort of help through. I mean, Ramps. I remember playing with Ramps when I made a comeback a couple of years through, 92. Playing with Ramps at Headingley and just doing the same sort of thing. We'll just play through this. We'll win the game. Just play through this. And it is one of those cliches. Whenever anyone comes into an England side for the first time, people say, "Oh, just be yourself. Play the way you play. That's the way. That's why you're here." And yet there is that constraint, which is 2 things actually. One is it's a test match, and that obviously can tense people up. Secondly, if you've had a couple of failures or a couple of opportunities gone begging, then that adds the pressure. So suddenly to be able to relax enough to be oneself actually isn't quite as easy as the cliche suggests.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And you look at players. I mean, I've thought about it many a time afterwards, for a few years whilst I was still playing, and wished I'd have gone in with probably a bit of a different attitude. But in reality to it, it's the fact that you're playing for England. It's the highest you can play at that particular time. And you don't want to let yourself down. You don't want to let the team down. And everybody's looking at you. And of course, you look at certain players who handle it brilliantly and certain players who probably didn't, and the abilities of them are probably far better than many players that they've been out there, but they didn't quite get it because they're mentally weren't able to handle it as well as others. And that's why I take my hat off to people like, if you like, Avers and yourself, and who, had big, long careers, who worked at the game and got what they got from it, but they were able to deal with it. That was the thing. And I always remember that so much. I remember at the Oval, because I was going to bat the next day, I slept terribly, and I'm a great sleeper because I was thinking about it, because it's a test match.
Yeah.
And it's the pressure we put on ourselves. And I wish I'd been able to, in some ways, get rid of that earlier.
Yeah, there's always whatever skill and ability and mental strength people have. There's also, I would admit to quite happily, so the element of luck. When you play your first games, things can conspire against you. If you play against relatively comfortable opposition, that helps. I always felt, for instance, for Graham Hicks starting against the West Indies, who targeted him, as the great white hope, as it were.
Yeah.
And he came up against sort of the likes of Ambrose, Walsh, and the rest of it, where that's going to be difficult in the county game, let alone in the midst of a test match, and you're making your debut after 3-4 years. All those things that conspire to make it harder. So the element of luck, if you happen to get off to a good start, you get sort of 30, 40, 50, relatively quickly, then you obviously feel as though you're at that level, and you've got a chance to make it last, a chance to make sure you belong there.
Yeah. Well, that was the word I was just about to say, belong, because you've got to have that feeling that you belong in that environment and be part of, the team that's relying on you, as I would rely on yourself or Gucci or Lammy as being part of the batting unit. That I would hope at some point you get to that where you're looking at you and saying, yeah, you believe that I could score runs.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. But I just felt, that the opportunity was there and I did have them, but I didn't take the opportunities. But as I say, Gucci getting 330, the hundreds he scored in that.
Greedy and selfish. I mean,
absolutely. He could have let me in a lot earlier. Getting injured, in the second innings at Old Trafford. Yeah. And then starting to play and getting caught behind down the leg side. And as you rightly say, it's the frustration. But, that was the summer, that was the series. And, we were all, like you were saying, we were all on tender hooks to see whether we were going to go to Australia. You asked me a question earlier, actually. James Whittaker went to Australia in '86 on the Gats tour. Yeah. That was the period when I thought to myself, I could be that player. Because Jimmy and I were the same age, very similar county careers at that point. He got the nod, I didn't. There was Rob Bailey, like I said, there was other players that were doing well in, as in the English county game as young players. So, there was a lot of young talent, if you like, that was out there, but the senior players, such as yourself, and rightly so, were getting the runs and staying in the team. So it was very difficult to get in. So to be in that position at the Oval, waiting to see whether you were going to get selected to go to Australia, because the Ashes is still and was the biggest thing. Would I have liked to have gone to the West Indies? Yeah, of course. You go anywhere you send, but the Ashes is still the best one. And those tours were long tours, weren't we? I think we were away for like 4.5 months.
Yeah,
and we went to New Zealand for 3 weeks after that. It was
quite a long series. Part of the 4.5 months. Yeah. So another call. You're hanging on for another telephone call then?
Yeah, absolutely. I got the call. I'm sure I got the call off Graham, actually, off Gucci, saying that I was going to go. And, the relief was amazing, really, that, wow, I'm going to be part of this tour that goes down to Australia. And it's also, we play the game. We're professional players, to have a winter where you're getting paid good money to go to Australia. Rather than selling cars or whatever I was doing at the time, it was a nice feeling, really, and to go and enjoy that financial security a little bit as well. So, I just look back on that now as like the great opportunity that was nearly there. Because, I don't exactly know what my figures are, and perhaps you can find those out, but I think I averaged nearly 40 in first class cricket, if not 40. On that tour, and nearly 30 in the one day side.
Yeah.
Now, if you put that as your first tour for any player, and you'd say I've had half a decent tour, but I didn't play in any of the test matches, but I played in all the one day internationals. And I batted in every position in the one day internationals. I batted 1 to 6 because you remember Gucci got injured.
Yeah.
He did his hand, and
bitten by a spider.
I opened at the Wacker against Australia and New Zealand. I batted at 6 against New Zealand on my debut. Then I was moved up to open. Then I was down to 4. Then it was just I've never got in a settled position where I thought, right, I can just build on this here. So yeah.
So Johnny, you got you had some starts in the tour games. You got 10 and 18 against Western Australia.
Yeah.
19 and 18 against South Australia.
Yeah.
14 and 41 against New South Wales.
Yeah.
But you then did very well at against Queensland.
Yeah, I got 100. I got 132 at Queensland.
Carrera,
yes.
Carrera,
all places.
No, it's not the Porsche he was selling when he was not playing.
no, they were BMWs, David.
That's right. Yeah, they didn't do a Carrera or a Carrera.
So where was the Tiger Moth incident?
That was the Carrera, yeah. It was during that Queensland game.
Yeah, so you'd scored your 132.
Yeah, Gucci asked me to bat at 3, which he actually said to me, we've got a bit of a problem, because if you remember, Judgy was in terrible nick. Robin Smith was really struggling, and he actually came to me and said, "I'd like you to bat at 3." And yeah, great, I'd love to. And their attack was half a decent attack, I felt. Rackerman, McDermott, Kasparovich, Peter Taylor, the off spinner, Trevor Holmes, and if I'm missing a bowler, I don't know who it was. But AB played, and Healy, Graham Hick played for them. He was their overseas player. So they were a very good side, the Queensland team, and it was hot. I also remember it was stifling hot, and we had a huge thunderstorm, and I was 100 not out overnight, and it absolutely battered down. I mean, one of those dark grey black clouds sort of like filled in, and it just absolutely battered down. The ground was underwater. And I thought, Christ, we might not get on again here. But next morning, they pulled the covers off. Wicket was dry, and the outfield was sort of a bit heavy-ish. But I always remember, because it was so hot, that it was like the moisture was coming up over your body out of the ground. Yeah. I've never been so hot on a cricket ground, I don't think. And I blasted one to cover, as was my way, for 132. I hit Trevor Holmes, skimmed it to extra cover and was out. And that was just before lunch. And then, I don't know, sort of we had lunch, and I seem to, in my head, and I seem to remember bumping into you and Lammy on the stairwell, and overhearing you saying you were going to go up in one of those Tiger Moths. Now, that's my memory. And me then turning around and saying, well, if you're going up, there's 2 planes. Are you looking for a co-pilot sort of thing? And you said, yeah, of course. And that was that.
You're okay, right. So you were in a very strong position, having made 130. I'd had a really good test series up until that point. We played 3, so I was in good form. But I made a classic 13 before lunch on that same day as you got out for 130. And we all know the story, but these Tiger Moths have been doing their scenic trips for the last two and a half days, taking off over the sight screen at one end, half an hour in the air, don't tour of the beaches on the Gold Coast, all very nice, $75. And that's the sort of thing I can't resist. So I've been sort of chatting to Lammy, and the orders for the afternoon were England to bat through the afternoon into the evening session, declaring all the rest of it. Lammy and Robin were both well set, I think. So it looks like we had a clear afternoon. And yes, so I had a chat with Lammy saying, I think I might just, quite tempted. And which you overheard. Whether it was on the staircase, I can't remember. I mean, I thought it might have been in the dressing rooms or something. But yes, when you said, well, can I come too? It was, well, who am I to say no?
Well, yeah, I was a grown man. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, Can
I just say though, before we carry on with the Tiger Moth story, your 100 at Sydney was one of the best innings I ever saw.
Well, of course you can.
It was phenomenal. It was just wonderful batting, and I actually went down and sat on the old hill because we knew that the hill was going, and I sat with Martin Johnson, the journalist, and me and him just sat there together. Watching you get this 100 for about 40 minutes, an hour, and then I had to go back to the dressing room. I was back on duty as 12th man or something.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, it was a fabulous innings, David. I don't ever underestimate anybody tells you that. I tell you, it was brilliant.
Thank you, and it is one of my favourites. There were all sorts of side stories to that same Test match, that same choice. The tour was an extraordinary thing, wasn't it? We can let's just nail the Tiger Moth quickly, just for the record.
Yeah.
So we had. One or both of us had to go to Peter Lush and get some meal money off management to pay for the flight, $75. If you remember, in those days, you got a weekly allowance in cash management to feed yourself, and have the old glass of wine and all the rest of it, or whatever you wanted to do. To be honest. We borrowed that, wandered round, checked the state of play, quick phone call back to the ground, suited up, Biggles kit, and off we went.
Yeah. Bruce was the pilot as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
An Australian called Bruce.
Yeah, everyone has to be called Bruce in Australia. It's just Monty Python said it saves confusion. Mind if we call you Bruce, just to save confusion?
And we take off in formation. That was the other thing that I was really amazed at, was how close we were when we were flying, because it was like I could touch your wing sort of thing. That was the it was really close. I was thinking, crud, this is so close, it's ridiculous.
I mean, they are. I mean, apart from
by the way, did you talk the pilot into flying in over the side screens?
Yeah,
right, because I don't remember that, but I just remember coming in and thinking, we haven't done, when they were doing these loops and what have you around the other side. They never came over the cricket ground, but the fact that we went directly over the cricket ground, and I was thinking, where are we going here? And it's like directly behind the bowler's arm, and Lammy sort of holding Carl Rackerman up and giving it the old machine gunner, trying to shoot us down. You know?
I think they both tried to shoot us down. Robin with his grey nickels. So we had 2 runs down the line of the pitch, and then we still had 15 minutes left. So quiet word with Bruce in his ear. Let's go and do the beaches. Have a look down there. Beautiful beaches on the Gold Coast, and beautiful people on the beaches on the Gold Coast. So we got full value for the half hour, I felt, and then of course fans and stuff started to collide, only because people had spotted. So put 2 and together somehow. I mean, long lenses, a bit of curly hair coming out the back of the helmet, and flying helmet in my case. And so people started to get to know about it.
Well, I mean, they recognised you. I wouldn't have a clue who I was, but go on, kid.
You recreated the picture, though, didn't you, with Graham Morris later in the day?
Well, I did.
Yeah. Well, I remember. No, we didn't do it with Graham Morris. I think
Adrian Morrell was there as we landed.
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
He'd spotted it. He made the move. He was very, very sharp. And a local press cameraman had also been there. So Bruce had actually had a word with the locals,
right,
for an opportunity. By the way, Bruce also got fined for flying too low over a built-up area, which was a bit unfair with the minimal crowd that was watching the game. But so the cat was out of the bag. So people knew about it. And the trick at the end of the day, which is always the funny bit as far as I'm concerned, is that because Adrian Morrell, one of the 2 cameramen on the tour, had got the pictures for half the newspapers back in the UK. Graham needed them from the other half of the newspapers back in the UK. Otherwise, he'd have been a bit left out. So he said to both of us, well, do you mind coming back to the ground? Going back to the airstrip. So you can just get a couple of pictures done. It won't take long, 10, 20 minutes, job done. And you can go out. So I've got, we put the shorts and T-shirts back on, donned the flying goggles back again. I always have to tell the story. I told Graham, as in Gooch, as in captain of this tour, one of the most obvious and egregious lies of all time, because we said, I'm going for a run.
Right.
Now, he of all people should have realised at no stage in 15 years of professional cricket at this stage had I ever volunteered to go for a run before, during, or after a game. So there's obviously something wrong with that statement. Anyway, so we
I remember you saying that.
Potted off. Didn't, because Lammy got 100 on that tour, then ran back to the hotel and did a hamstring, didn't he? I think.
Maybe somewhere else.
I think that was the tour before, wasn't it?
Oh, was it West? Was it? Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a feeling it was, but I might be wrong.
I think his falling off the pavement job was in Victoria, one of the country towns in Victoria. We played against Victoria. So we do the pics. I go out. When did you first realise there was a bit of an issue? Because I went out straight away after the pics.
Well, I couldn't get hold of you all night. I remember that, and I think you'd gone out with David Frith, hadn't you?
Correct. Yeah, former editor of Wisden Cricket Monthly.
Former editor of the Cricketer before the other one.
Sorry, you can edit.
So we went back got changed again and went back to the hotel. And as I got to the hotel, I was accosted by a very red-faced Peter Lush, who seemed to have the bit of a bulldog chewing a wasp scenario going on in his face, and not very happy at all. And literally sent me up to the team room where Gucci was and Mickey, and Lushy was very upset. I remember him, and he was purple at one stage, and I just remember sort of saying, "Well, what's the issue? What's the problem?" And Peter Lush turning around and saying, "You've undermined this tour. You're trying to deflect from what's gone on a day's cricket." And I was thinking to myself, why would I do that? I've just scored 100. You know, it just didn't make sense. And I always remember as I was leaving, and I actually got in the lift with Mickey to go back down to where I was going, to my room. But I always remember as I was thinking, I said, guys, I said, this was a bit of fun. It wasn't to undermine anybody. It was just to give a bit of a lift, a bit of a team spirit thing. You know, it wasn't anything to suggest that we were trying to undermine anything. And I hope that you realise that. And I remember sort of like saying it in a bit of a pleading way, you know, to say, come on, boys, you know, this isn't necessary type thing. And as I got in the lift with Mickey said to me, he says, "You stuffed up here, you know." And he did sort of lay it on me a little bit. And I certainly didn't sleep very well that night. But I remember trying to ring your room a couple of times and no answer, because you'd obviously gone out with David Frith. And I was rooming with Martin Bicknell, and Bickers just kept laughing at me, you know, as if to say, well, you know, what have you done, sort of thing. Anyway, the next morning you rang the room really early, because I reckon you must have had about 1 million messages from management.
Yeah.
And you saying, "Don't worry about it, it'll be fine, I'll sort it out," you know. And then when we got to the ground and everybody was laughing and having a bit of a giggle with us, but not when the management was around, then the sort of story started to get a bit deeper, that there was talk of us sending us home.
Well, yeah, not quite so swiftly. I mean, because I didn't get back for a little while that night, time undisclosed. I got back to a series of messages, written messages, thrust under my door. The last of which basically say, "Come and see me at 8:30 in the morning," signed by Mr. Lush, by Peter. So I knocked on this door at 8:30 promptly, to be confronted with quite an amusing scene, which is manager's suite, the lounge area. I mean, I'm ruining my after dinners here, but the lounge area had a bar, of course. You know, it's Australia, so there's a bar. Bars have bar stools. One's in the middle of the room. Instinct tells me this is mine. And up against me were Peter Lush, tour manager, Mickey Stewart, England team manager, Graham Gooch, England captain, Alan Lamb, England vice captain. Three of them looking deadly serious. Lammy, to use the local expression, pissing himself. So again, instinct tells you there is it's not going to go well. So we actually had about an hour's conversation before they said, "Well, we've actually got to go down and finish the game off." And it varied between me saying very swiftly, "Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause any offence or stir anything out. Just seemed like a bit of fun." So we were both on that page. And whatever, I mean, I have to say, actually, I mean, there were a lot of issues on that tour. There are a lot of issues, apart from not doing so well in the test matches up until that point, 2-0 down after 3. There were issues about sort of the style of management. There was the odd injury, Graham's injury. And I was, unfortunately, as a senior player with, how can I put it, the ability to criticise, rather at the centre of this. So we actually, that discussion we had that morning for me, or with me alone, was about all sorts of issues pertaining to the tour. Anyway, we beat Queensland, buggered off to Adelaide. I'll rephrase that. We beat Queensland, off we went to Adelaide, 4 or 5 days in between the two games, while they decided whether they could send us home according to tour contracts or whether they just have to fine us heavily. And you're right. I would guess the overall picture from within the dressing room, within those that watch the game professionally, and certainly those that watch the game for fun, was, that was a bit of fun. That, never seen that before. And after all this, they won't see it again. Whereas the only people who felt rather obliged, in fact, rather too obliged to take it incredibly seriously and overreact, was team management.
Which was Mickey and Peter.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the end, and Graham. Graham's captain and this. If you go further, anyway. So Peter and Mickey, no doubt. If Mickey was already saying to you on that same evening, "Well, you've mucked up here," it's not sort of. There's no sort of no wiggle room to say, we kind of understand what you were doing, or it may be a misjudgment. It was basically already an egregious sin. you say, they were already talking about, or very soon talking about, the ultimate sanction, which is leaving the tour, which would have been grossly, a gross overreaction.
Well, that was what was worrying me. You can imagine from a young player's perspective, who's trying his best to get in the team and stay in the team, to be sent home in disgrace for flying an aeroplane over a ground that I was playing in, especially when I just scored 100. Would have been, you just think to yourself, bloody hell, I've got a question for you, actually, David. I heard this on the one of Sky's programs. I don't know whose it was, yours or maybe Athers, his own one, Captain's Log or something, one of those programs. That Athers said that you'd asked him if he wanted to go in the plane prior to that. Is that true?
No idea. I have no recollection of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen, because I have no recollection of an awful lot of things between 1957 and now. I can't. I couldn't tell you. Honestly, couldn't.
He said in the thing, it didn't annoy me, but I just thought that's a bit strange thing to say, because the way he said it, his actual words were, "Well, Johnny Morris became the mug that went with him," or something like that. And I thought it was a bit harsh, but I don't remember others, ever coming into the conversation, sort of thing.
No, I will say. I mean, in all honesty, I have no recollection. I suppose I could easily have asked him. I mean, I remember talking to Lammy. That was the thing. Lammy was one of my great mates in that side. Others obviously a bit younger, new to the team. I wouldn't have known. I mean, I'm incredibly fond of Mike. I think he's absolutely brilliant at everything he does nowadays as well. But and we get on so well. But I can't. Would I have suggested that to him? I don't know. I mean, you were, and when he says you were the mug that said yes, I would say that's a little bit with hindsight rather more than what he was saying at the time. I mean, obviously, if he was asked and he did decline, and maybe he thought it wouldn't have been great for him as a very young player in that squad, maybe he thought that through.
See, that's why he went to Cambridge University. And wasn't an April Fool.
and as far as I know, he's never had to sell cars for a living either. But,
I'll just stick up for my friend Graham Gooch here. We saw him at the second test, didn't we, against Sri Lanka? And he was very amused now, wasn't he, about it? No.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Graham and I have discussed this in public 1,000 times. If we get put into a corporate Q&A session, for instance, inevitably this will come up. I mean, there's so many of the places I go to for, say, after dinner speeches. By the way, I need a few of those to pay for the flights to New Zealand. Wherever I go to speak, if I leave it out of my speech, but there's time for questions afterwards, someone will pipe up and say, "Tell us about the Tiger," which guaranteed 10 minutes of story plus embellishment, plus dry humour, plus a big smile at the end of it, and it's actually repaid its weight in gold since the £1,000 fine that was imposed upon the two of us in Adelaide back in '91. So I suppose in a sense we made a profit by it. But I would still say that whatever you say about all that and the rights and wrongs of it and the wisdom or lack of wisdom, it was still fun. It's still a great story. It's unique. I love a unique story when it's mine. And yours, John.
It didn't do John any favours, though, David, did it? It didn't.
No, but it actually didn't do me any favours in the end either.
No, I suppose not.
I mean, my form disappeared. So that Adelaide suddenly, having been in great rhythm, and as Johnny was so kindly saying, playing super cricket in Sydney, next Test match in Adelaide, I looked like a club player, or not even that good. Everything rhythm had gone. Perth, the same thing. 18 months off. So actually, it didn't help me. And in fact, if you want to put it on the record, as it were, when they were picking the side, having got back in the team against Pakistan in '92, and they were picking the side to go to India '92, '93, I would suggest that memories of 1991 were still in their minds Not that I'm aware of many airstrips or many planes in India that I would actually take a fancy. There was a feeling that the ability to think rationally and put those rational thoughts into the public domain in opposition to those thoughts of management at the time might be dangerous in a heated cauldron, which is a tour of India.
Well, I look at that, and of course, I mentioned it earlier that, after the 100 I got against Queensland, I never played a game at all for England after that. And I knew in my heart of hearts that I'd been diminished to the back room during the tour. I always remember going at Adelaide being told, "Oh, they didn't need me to even be 12th man one day," and thinking to myself, "Why? What? I'm still here. Why would they just say, oh, don't even bother coming today?" It was really weird. And then I remember sitting in a hotel.
That happened to me. That was a sort of bit of a roster thing with squad of 16. But...
Yeah, of course it was. But I was part of that squad, and so a roster squad. So over the 5 days of a test match, you were expected to do say 2, maybe 3 sessions each.
Yeah,
as 12th man duties, and that happened in every test match. Apart from that, literally when the decision was made to fine us £1,000. This particular day, I don't know why, but then I remember turning the TV on, probably in my hotel room, and Mark Eilert was fielding, and he wasn't even part of the squad. And I thought, it's just weird, This is like, delighted I was still there, but I knew that my involvement was going to be absolutely nothing from that moment on. We went to New Zealand, and I never played a game.
Yeah.
Even though I played in all the one-day internationals in Australia, and I think I did all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my regret is not saying to you, it might not be wise.
Well, as I said, David, I was 26, 27 years of age, and I was a grown man, so I've made my own decision. Don't worry. I never blamed anybody but myself in that respect for being the character that I am. I want to enjoy stuff as well, and like you said, it was certainly an opportunity not to be missed in my mind. So that wasn't an issue as far as I was concerned. And I've never ever said it would be the case. I mean, Graham and I get on really, really well, and it's great that we do. He came as batting coach at Durham. I worked with him very closely for a couple of years, and it started because I was terribly out of nick after this 1996 season. I couldn't score a run, and I used to go down to Chelmsford once a week. I used to stay overnight at Graham's house. I used to do 2, maybe 3 sessions in the indoor school at Chelmsford, just me and him. Did that for a whole winter. And then he came and joined us at Durham. So, the relationship with Graham has been great ever since, really. But, the fact that he was the England captain at the time, and, he made decisions with hindsight, looking back, he made the decision from my perspective. He didn't obviously think that I was the player I thought I could be. But which is fine. I ain't got a problem with that, because you've got to make those decisions, And when I had the opportunities, like I said at the start, I didn't quite take them. That was the thing. I just got out at the wrong time, or something happened, that just didn't stop, just held me back that little bit. So yeah, I mean, I remember playing. I don't know whether you played or not. We played the academy at Adelaide just before the one-day series. And the team was quite set, I think, and I don't think I was going to play in it. But I got a really good 70 or 80 against the academy, and I remember smashing Shane Warne around. I know he wasn't the bowler then, but he became, obviously. And that got me in the one-day team, and I got 60 something on my debut, and we lost the game, but it was off 35 balls or something, and it sort of got me a run in the team. And so I felt as I was starting to emerge then a little bit. And then, as I say, the next game was at the Wacker, I think. And I opened the bat. It was either against New Zealand first or Australia first. It was the quickest, bounces pitch I'd ever played on. Ned and I put 50 or 60 on, opening the batting with Ned. I hit the first ball off Terry Alderman to fine leg, and then I was stuck at Carl Rackerman's end for about 6 overs with 3 slips and a gully on. While Ned was whopping Terry all round the Wacker. And again, it was great fun at the time, but I look back at it now and thinking if I'd just got up the other end, maybe I might have got a few more as well in that game.
Yeah.
And it just adds up, But life's life, isn't it? I certainly don't look back on it with a regret. In some ways, I say that, if I hadn't have done it, maybe I might have had an opportunity later on, because I did feel as though, as you just said then, that it was looked upon as, should we take David Gower to India or Pakistan, whichever one you said, because Keith Fletcher took over from Mickey, and we played at Cheltenham. It was 1993. And we played at Cheltenham College on a quick pitch, and Courtney played. I got a double 100, and he came to look at Corky Bowl. That's why he was there, and he came in the dressing room afterwards. Keith Fletcher did, and said, "Mate, that was a really top knock." He said, "West Indies this winter. Are you up for it?" Sort of thing. I said, "Yeah, bloody right I am. I'd love to have another go." He said, "Well, that might be the sort of play we need to take people to take them on a bit, And that was a conversation.
Yeah.
And I then got 100 at Old Trafford against Wasim, and I got 100 at Derby against Wacker in the same summer. So I'd proven myself that I could take the quicks on a little bit. And when it came to announce the tours, I never even got a mention. And again, I played really quite well that summer. Again, I'd say I was in the top 10 run scorers in England that summer. And never got a mention and never got a look in. And I knew that it was always then, looked upon as that was just something that was never going to change. And I have to put it down to the Tiger Moth, I'm afraid. But there you go.
Yeah.
Same feeling.
Well,
and here we are talking about it. How many years later?
And you've been very kind. You've given us an hour of your time. So,
wow. Oh yeah, hour and 1 minute. Yes.
Yeah. Very, very good of you.
I've enjoyed it actually, because David and I have seen each other a lot, and we've never really. I mean, I don't remember you telling me that you were pulled in at 8:30 in the morning or something like that, and being grilled, sitting on the chair, the bar stool. I don't remember you ever telling me that, but I do remember you saying you would sort it out, and I put all my faith in that.
I genuinely. Actually, that was exactly the point, because neither of us felt we'd done anything. I mean, for instance, on that tour, and I'm not going to dog people in it necessarily, but there'll be the usual thing where a squad is announced the night before the game, Adelaide, for instance, in the following game, and the 11/12 are fixed. But the usual thing is, by the way, don't forget anyone could play if something goes wrong overnight.
Yeah.
And one of our team was spotted, and it probably won't take much guesswork, was spotted coming into the hotel at 8:30, 9 o'clock, as we were all ready to go to the game.
Yeah.
And that was no one took him into a room for an hour talking about motivation and professionalism and all the rest of it. Actually, they probably did, but no one threatened him with going home.
Yeah.
Whereas for a little bit of fun in the game, actually, ironically, in the game which we won pretty well, as you said earlier. So it was a good Queensland side. We beat them. Day 4, we set them targets, bowled them out. So that was actually, you could argue, we could case the defence. So actually, that our little flight was the catalyst for bringing the team together to win a game for the first time on tour, pretty much. Probably won't go down very well again if we use that.
Well, I won't worry about it. I don't think either of us are ever going to get picked for England again.
John, come on. Always keep your hopes alive.
It gave the tour a bit of lift off, didn't it?
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, there's always one.
Time for a soft landing.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Well, shall we draw a line there? Thank you very much indeed.
No, I've enjoyed it, and it's been nice to just reminisce a little bit about it.
Yes.
If you're not recording anymore, I do remember.
Okay, let's press in recording there, and I'm afraid our listeners will have to miss this story, which is no doubt a little bit X-rated. Is it? Okay, thanks very much, Johnny, and thanks, Dave.